When did Congress pass a law saying pistol braces qualified? I'm not asking you about short-barreled rifles. I know what short-barreled rifles are qualified as in the National Firearms Act. This pistol brace was sold in 2012. A guy walked into a gun store, bought it legally, walked out of the gun store with the pistol brace. 2012, a guy in Dickinson, North Dakota walked into a firearms store and bought a gun legally, correct?
Well, I've got here the actual original brace that this letter was responsive to. So you say that the brace changed, and so you had to implement this rule. Are you telling me that this brace is exempt from your rule?
FPC crushes pistol brace ban. The Arms Policy Coalition announced a significant legal victory in the case of Mock versus Garland, which challenges the Biden administration's pistol brace ban instituted by the ATF. U.S. District Court Judge Reed O'Connor delivered a summary judgment in favor of FPC and its co-plaintiffs, resulting in the vacating of the ATF's controversial rule. FPC President Brandon Combs expressed the importance of this ruling, stating, "The Biden administration's ATF acted unlawfully in an attempt to turn millions of gun owners into felons. However, FPC and our members stood firm and successfully challenged this overreach. Today's order demonstrates that our community can confront and triumph over governmental overreach. FPC members should take pride in this accomplishment. We are prepared to defend this victory through the appeals process, and if necessary, at the Supreme Court, as we have done in other cases." This ruling adds to a series of successes for FPC against the Biden administration. Notably, the U.S. Supreme Court recently agreed to hear another FPC case where the coalition had prevailed in lower courts. The plaintiffs in this case include two individual FPC members, Maxim Defense and FPC itself, represented by attorneys Cody Wisniewski of the FPC Action Foundation, Bradley Benbrook and Stephen Duvernay of the Benbrook Law Group, and R. Brent Cooper and Benjamin Passy of Cooper and Scully. The U.S. Department of Justice is expected to appeal the Mock decision and its remedies. The Arms Policy Coalition aims to maximize human liberty, defend constitutional rights, advance individual liberty, and restore freedom. The FPC Action Foundation is dedicated to creating a world of maximal human liberty through charitable legal action, public policy, education, and research programs.
You're not exempting the same brace that you gave this letter to.
If the brace is submitted, we'll classify it.
It's pretty obvious you're misleading people here when you say that the brace has changed, because your rule affects the braces that didn't change.
I believe it's a statutory maximum of 10 years.
10 years for owning a piece of plastic?
New gun sales regulations enforced. The Biden administration has introduced a significant new rule aimed at expanding background checks on arm purchases, targeting thousands more firearms dealers across the U.S. This rule, which is poised to take effect soon, seeks to close a substantial loophole that has permitted tens of thousands of guns to be sold annually by unlicensed dealers without background checks. These unlicensed sales have allowed potential buyers, including those legally prohibited from owning firearms, to bypass the existing legal safeguards. President Joe Biden has emphasized the importance of this measure in combating gun violence. In a statement, he highlighted the potential impact of the rule. "This is going to keep guns out of the hands of domestic exploiters and felons, and my administration is going to continue to do everything we possibly can to save lives. Congress needs to finish the job and pass universal background checks legislation now." The new regulation clarifies that anyone who sells firearms primarily for profit must obtain a federal license and conduct background checks, regardless of whether the sales occur online, at gun shows, or in traditional brick-and-mortar stores. Attorney General Merrick Garland underscored this point, stressing the necessity of uniform compliance across all sales platforms to enhance public safety. The administration's move is part of a broader strategy to address gun violence, a key issue in Biden's policy agenda and re-election campaign. The creation of the White House Office of Gun Violence Prevention, overseen by Vice President Kamala Harris, further exemplifies this commitment. Biden has also consistently advocated for the banning of attack weapons, a proposal that has faced considerable resistance in Congress. Predictably, the rule is expected to face legal challenges from gun rights groups. The National Rifle Association has already declared its intent to oppose the rule, describing it as unlawful. Similarly, the National Shooting Sports Foundation, a prominent industry trade group, has voiced concerns about the ATF's authority to implement such regulations and is considering legal action. Despite these anticipated legal battles, administration officials remain confident that the rule will withstand judicial scrutiny. They point to the more than 380,000 public comments received during the proposal phase as indicative of significant public support for the measure. The rule was first proposed in August following the enactment of a landmark gun violence bill, which was a bipartisan response to the tragic school shooting in Uvalde, Texas. The law redefined the criteria for individuals engaged in the business of selling firearms, mandating that they obtain licenses from the ATF and conduct background checks. This rule is designed to enforce that change and will become effective 30 days after its publication in the Federal Register. Currently, there are approximately 80,000 federally licensed firearms dealers in the U.S. The new rule is expected to impact an additional 20,000 dealers who have previously circumvented licensing requirements by claiming not to be engaged in the business of firearm sales. ATF Director Steve Dettelbach underscored the importance of this rule for public safety and fairness, asserting that all sellers must adhere to the same standards. Exceptions to the licensing requirement will be maintained for individuals who occasionally resell firearms to family members or liquidate personal collections. However, the rule aims to ensure that regular sellers are held to consistent legal standards. This regulatory change arrives shortly after the ATF released new data indicating that over 68,000 illegally trafficked firearms were sold by unlicensed dealers between 2017 and 2021. These firearms were involved in nearly 370 shootings, highlighting the critical need for comprehensive background checks. Gun control advocates have lauded the new regulation as a significant advancement towards universal background checks, a long-standing Democratic priority that has faced persistent opposition in Congress. Angela Farrell-Zabala, executive director of Moms Demand Action, praised the rule, attributing its success to relentless grassroots advocacy efforts aimed at fostering safer communities. Paxton challenges new gun rule. Last month, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton filed a lawsuit against the Biden administration and the ATF over new regulations impacting private gun sales. The rule, issued earlier this year, mandates that arms dealers across the U.S. conduct background checks on buyers at gun shows or other venues outside traditional brick-and-mortar stores. The Biden administration's new rule aims to close a significant loophole that has allowed unlicensed dealers to sell guns without performing background checks, potentially allowing individuals prohibited from owning firearms to acquire them. This regulatory change was proposed as part of a bipartisan response to the tragic mass incident at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas, where 19 students and 2 teachers lost their lives. President Joe Biden emphasized the importance of this rule in preventing arms from falling into the wrong hands. This is going to keep guns out of the hands of domestic exploiters and felons, Biden stated, and my administration is going to continue to do everything we possibly can to save lives. Congress needs to finish the job and pass universal background checks legislation now. However, Paxton's lawsuit frames the new rule as an overreach that infringes on Second Amendment rights. In a press release issued on the day of the lawsuit, Paxton called the rule a flagrant violation of the Second Amendment, arguing that it unlawfully targets private firearm transfers. Yet again, Joe Biden is weaponizing the federal bureaucracy to rip up the Constitution and destroy our citizens' Second Amendment rights, Paxton said. This is a dramatic escalation of his tyrannical exploitation of authority. With today's lawsuit, it is my great honor to defend our constitutionally protected freedoms from the out-of-control federal government. The lawsuit has garnered support from several other states, including Louisiana, Missouri, and Utah. Gun Owners of America Vice President Eric Pratt criticized the rule in Paxton's press release, stating, "Criminalizing untold numbers of Americans for simply selling a firearm in a private party transaction is wrong, unconstitutional, and must be halted by the courts. Anything less would further encourage this tyrannical administration to continue weaponizing vague statutes into policies that are meant to further harass and intimidate gun owners and dealers at every turn. Utah Attorney General Sean Reyes and Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch also expressed strong opposition. Reyes highlighted historical grievances with the ATF's overreach, while Fitch pointed out the perceived overreach of treating private gun owners as commercial dealers. The Second Amendment could never have contemplated this kind of regulation, and it will not withstand scrutiny in the courts, Finch asserted. Despite multiple attempts, the ATF has not provided a comment regarding the recent lawsuit. As the legal battle unfolds, it will be closely watched by both gun rights advocates and those seeking stricter gun control measures. DOJ finalizes rules. The Department of Justice has recently implemented significant changes in American gun regulation, heralded as the most substantial increase in decades. These finalized rules aim to close a notorious loophole that allowed the sale of firearms without background checks at informal venues like online platforms and gun shows. Vice President Harris and U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland have emphasized the importance of these rules in preventing potentially violent individuals who are legally prohibited from owning guns from acquiring firearms. The regulations, expected to be enforced within 30 days, stem from the bipartisan Safer Communities Act signed into law by President Biden in June 2022. This act expanded the scope of gun sellers mandated to conduct background checks on buyers. Harris, speaking to reporters, underlined the nation's right to live free from gun violence while rejecting the notion of a false dichotomy between Second Amendment rights and preventing tragedies. These rules, part of a comprehensive effort under the bipartisan Safer Communities Act, provide clarity on background check requirements and target the notorious gun show loophole. By reinforcing federal regulations on gun sales, the DOJ aims to enhance public safety and ensure responsible firearm transactions. That's all for this video, folks. See you next time.